My name's Jason Miller, and if you'd asked me 2 years ago, I would have sworn on my father's grave that my marriage was rock solid. Emily and I had been together since our college days at Texas Tech, the kind of young love people thought was built to last. I was the dependable one, working construction management, clocking long hours under the Texas sun to make sure our bills were paid, the mortgage on our modest Dallas home covered, and maybe even a vacation once a year if we budgeted right. Emily worked part-time at a boutique downtown, mostly for the discounts and to keep herself busy. She always said she loved the independence, though I suspected it was more about the new clothes and the little thrill of customers complimenting her taste. We weren't flashy people, but we were steady. Or at least, I thought we were. Our Friday nights usually meant barbecue from Hutchins, college football on TV, and her curled up next to me with a blanket. Our neighbors would comment that we looked like the couple that had it figured out. But let me tell you, the cruel thing about betrayal is that it doesn't show its face until you are already neck deep in it. And by the time you realize something's wrong, the rot has spread too far to fix. The first crack appeared in the smallest way: her phone. Emily, who once left her phone lying face down on the counter without a care, suddenly started carrying it like it was a newborn child. She'd take it into the bathroom, sleep with it under her pillow, and flip it over the second I walked in the room. I remember one night after dinner, we were sitting in the living room when her phone buzzed. She nearly jumped out of her skin to snatch it before I could even glance. I laughed it off, saying, "Geez, Em, it's just a text." But she only muttered something about a coworker and turned away. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, telling myself I was being paranoid. But my gut, it knew better. Then came the late nights. Emily started saying she was grabbing drinks with friends from the boutique. At first, I encouraged it. Hell, I wanted her to have a social life. But when drinks turned into stumbling home past midnight, heels in her hand, makeup smudged, with a faint smell of cologne I didn't recognize clinging to her clothes, my chest began to ache with questions I couldn't ask. I did ask once, casually, if I could join her and her friends sometime. She laughed too hard, almost nervously, and said, "Jason, you wouldn't enjoy boutique gossip and martinis, trust me." Then she kissed me on the cheek, the way you pat a dog's head when it's getting too curious. Still, I clung to hope. I told myself we were just going through a rough patch, like all marriages do. I buried myself in work, telling myself that once things calmed down, once we had kids, everything would align again. Kids, that was the next crack in the glass. I had always dreamed of being a father, tossing a football with my son in the backyard, teaching a daughter how to ride a bike. Emily, though, always found a reason to delay. "Next year," she'd say, or "let's travel first." But then, out of nowhere, she came to me one morning with her hands trembling, eyes wide, and whispered, "Jason, I'm pregnant." I remember the way the word hit me, pregnant. It filled my chest with warmth, like a prayer answered. I lifted her up, spun her around the kitchen, laughing, crying, feeling like the luckiest man alive. For that brief moment, I believed everything had finally fallen into place. The distance, the secrecy, the late nights, it all melted away under the glow of impending fatherhood. I pictured a little crib in the spare room, a stroller by the door, tiny shoes lined up next to our boots. But then something cracked again. Emily didn't smile the way I expected. She seemed cautious, almost like she was studying my reaction more than sharing in it. And within days, she started pressing me, hard, to go ahead and sign early paperwork. She said the hospital liked to have the father's information ready, to streamline the birth certificate, insurance, all of it. At the time, I thought nothing of it. But, looking back, I see how badly she wanted my signature on that dotted line. She needed me trapped before I could even question. The doubts came roaring back one Friday night at the diner I had been going to since high school. It's a place where the waitresses know your order before you open your mouth, and the regulars gossip louder than the jukebox. That night, one of the older guys at the counter leaned over to me and muttered, "Jason, you know your wife's been seen around here with some slick guy, tall fella, drives a silver BMW." My coffee went cold in my hand. I laughed it off, forced a smile, but inside I was burning. Silver BMW, not exactly a car you mistake in our part of town. When I confronted Emily, I didn't accuse. I just asked casually if she knew anyone with a BMW. She froze for half a second too long before answering. No, why?" I told her someone at the diner mentioned it. She brushed it off, called it small-town gossip. But my gut twisted again. I couldn't sleep that night, lying next to her while she scrolled on her phone under the covers. Every buzz of her screen felt like a knife in my ribs. That was the moment, the shift. The day I stopped being the oblivious husband and started becoming the man who would dig for truth, no matter how ugly it got. And trust me, the truth was uglier than I could have imagined. I didn't know it then, but that baby she claimed was mine was about to become the noose she'd try to tighten around my neck. And I was about to learn just how far a cheating wife would go to trap a man who loved her too much to see the truth. The Monday after that sleepless weekend, I started carrying a spiral notebook in my truck like I was prepping for an audit. I wrote down everything: times Emily left, times she came back, what she wore, where she said she was going. It felt paranoid at first, like I'd turned into the kind of man who reads shadows like scripture. But the more I wrote, the less crazy I sounded to myself. Patterns started to appear, times that didn't match, detours that didn't make sense. Wednesday night, she said she was grabbing nachos with the girls at a place in Deep Ellum. My guy at the diner swore he'd seen her 20 minutes later, sliding into a booth with that tall, silver BMW man at a wine bar off McKinney. She walked in wearing a beige trench and left in a black cardigan I'd never seen before. I wrote that down too. The receipts were the next thread I pulled. I had long ago learned that if you want to understand an American household, don't listen to the words, read the statements. On Thursday, a Nordstrom charge popped up on our joint card for lingerie I sure hadn't bought. 2 days later, a charge from a boutique hotel in Uptown at 11:47 p.m. I stared at that timestamp like it might confess if I looked hard enough. When I confronted her, I kept it easy, almost playful. "Big spender lately?" She laughed too loud and told me the boutique comped her with a staff discount. The hotel was for a friend's bachelorette hangout, nothing to worry about. She said it with the breezy confidence of a woman who expects belief on credit. I nodded and kissed her head, and, when she went to shower, I photographed every receipt and sent them to a clean email I created that hour. If this was going to court someday, I wanted more than hunches. The pregnancy became her drumbeat. She started leaving open tabs on the laptop: nursery paint palettes, stroller comparisons, best prenatal vitamins in Texas. She talked about baby names while we brushed our teeth. And every time, as casually as a waitress refilling coffee, she slid in the same ask: "We should fill out that hospital paperwork early, babe. They need your signature for the birth certificate stuff." Just to make it easy. She said it again at breakfast, again while I was lacing my work boots, again when we were folding laundry. It stopped sounding like logistics and started sounding like strategy. I told her, "We've got time," and she pouted the way she used to when she wanted me to kill a spider. "Jason, why are you making this difficult?" she asked, voice sweet with a hard edge underneath. "Don't you want our baby to have their father on record?" I took my notebook to my friend Mark that weekend. We'd poured concrete together in the early years and traded favors ever since. He's the kind of guy who knows a guy for anything. We were standing under the fluorescent hum of his garage lights, the smell of motor oil and Old Victory, when I told him everything. The receipts, the BM, the new cardigan. He listened without interrupting, then popped the tab on a Shiner Bock and said, "Get a prenatal DNA test. You don't need to wait." I thought that was TV drama stuff, something you watch on daytime court shows. Mark shook his head. "It's real. You can do a non-invasive test. Swab you, take a sample from her blood. Expensive, but cheaper than 18 years of child support for somebody else's kid." I sat there with the bottle sweating in my hand, the number 18 echoing like a church bell. I pictured myself paying for braces and baseball gloves for a boy who looked up at another man with the same eyes he got from him. Something inside me cracked clean through. "How do I even bring that up without tipping my hand?" I asked. Mark put down his beer and, like he had been waiting for this moment his whole life, opened a drawer and pulled out a little black device the size of a car key. "You don't," he said. "You collect. Texas is a one-party consent state for recordings. If she's running a game, you get it on record, then you talk tests." The next 84 hours were the longest of my life. I turned that recorder on before dinner, slipped it under the decorative runner on our console table, and let the house do the listening. Emily spent most of that first night pacing the kitchen and FaceTiming. The mic picked up muffled phrases through her Bluetooth buds, but I caught enough. "He's going to sign, I'm sure of it," and "No, I'm not worried about the timing, he's clueless." My heart did the cruelest thing then. It tried to bargain for her. Maybe she meant something else. Maybe he was her boss. Maybe timing was about a sale. The lies we tell ourselves when we're in love should be bottled and sold as anesthesia. On the second night, she forgot her buds. I sat in my truck across the street, engine off, watching our lit kitchen window like it was a stage. Her voice carried just enough. I told you, she hissed into the phone. Once he signs the early registration, we're set. He's on the hook. Hospital, insurance, all of it. The lawyer says Texas will presume paternity if the father signed anything at the hospital. If he tries to back out later, it'll be a mess for him, not me. The other voice was a man, low and confident. You said the dates were tight, he murmured. Jason's not an idiot. Emily's laugh had a bite I'd never heard. He is when it comes to me. I didn't cry. I didn't pound the steering wheel or scream at the night. I sat very still and felt my bones rearrange around a colder, harder version of myself. The kindness I'd carried for her, all the benefits of the doubt, the easy forgiveness, that version of me stopped breathing and didn't wake back up. I drove to a Walmart that stayed open late, bought a second recorder, and put that one under the passenger seat of her car. 2 days later, at 12:18 p.m., she met him. I know because the recorder in her car caught the door open, the clink of a watch against the handle, and his voice saying, "You look incredible." He had one of those smooth sales voices, all assurances and soft promises. She giggled like a teenager, and it made my stomach turn. They talked about a weekend at a lake house near Cedar Creek, about finishing what they started, about how, once Jason's locked in, we can relax. He asked if I'd pushed for a paternity test. She paused, then said, "No, he's too in love to ask." I made an appointment the next morning at a lab in Plano. The woman at the desk had the practiced kindness of someone who sees a lot of men like me. She explained the non-invasive prenatal paternity test like she was reading out of a manual for disasters. They'd swab my cheek, draw Emily's blood, compare fetal DNA in her bloodstream to mine. "We need the mother's consent," she added, eyes gentle. "Or else you'll have to wait until after birth." Consent. That word felt like a locked door I could see through but not open. I went home with a brochure in my glove box and a plan building, brick by angry brick. That night, when Emily perched on the edge of the couch and smiled like a woman batting 1,000, I surprised her. "Let's do all the prep the right way," I said, voice warm. "We'll sign whatever the hospital needs, but I also want us to do the prenatal DNA test. Not because I doubt you, because I want no questions from insurance, from anybody. Clean and easy, our baby deserves that." She blinked once, twice, a little hiccup in her performance. "That's unnecessary," she said, voice airy. "Jason, it's insulting." I took her hand. "Insurers can be nasty. This heads it off." I lied with a steady calm that scared me. "Besides, what do we have to hide?" She avoided me for 2 days after that. Then she came in hot. "Absolutely not," she announced in the kitchen, slamming a drawer hard enough to rattle the cutlery. "I won't let some lab stick me with needles for your paranoia." I reminded her she'd already had blood work scheduled for prenatal care. "We can add a tube," I said. She called me controlling. I stayed quiet. She stormed down the hall and texted someone so hard her nails clicked the glass. That night, the recorder in her car earned its keep. "He's asking for a DNA test," she snapped into the phone. "Can you talk to your lawyer friend?" The man's voice dropped even lower. "You need him to sign something. Anything, at the hospital. Push the registration forms. Texas loves presumption. If he signs, he's presumed the father. DNA later won't matter as much." So there was a pause, then the sound of lips against skin. "Babe," he murmured, "you've got this." I didn't sleep. At dawn, I copied the audio files onto a flash drive and a cloud folder. I printed the receipts, highlighted the hotel timestamps, and stapled everything like a clerk preparing for a trial that hadn't been scheduled yet. I wasn't ready to confront her, not without the one document that would turn this from a marital argument into a legal declaration. Without Emily's consent, I couldn't get the prenatal test, so I made peace with waiting for the birth, but I could prepare the battlefield. That afternoon, Emily tried sweet again. She made enchiladas, turned on a playlist we used to dance to, and in the middle of the kitchen, swaying against me, whispered, "Let's sign the forms tonight. For us." I looked over her shoulder at the refrigerator where our wedding photo was magneted under a Dallas Cowboys schedule. My smile felt like it belonged to some actor playing me on TV. "Tomorrow," I said, kissing her forehead. We'll do it tomorrow. Then I went to the bedroom, closed the door, and called a divorce attorney in Plano. I found through a friend of Mark's. I spoke quietly, answered questions, and when the attorney asked, "Do you believe the child is yours?" I said the truest sentence of my marriage. I believe my wife wants me to pay for a child that isn't. The trap was set. But I wasn't the prey anymore. I was the man building the cage around her lies. One recording, one receipt, one notarized statement at a time. The weeks leading up to the due date felt like I was standing in the eye of a storm, watching everything spin around me while I stood frozen. Emily played the part of the glowing mother-to-be, posting pictures of baby clothes on Facebook, letting her friends at the boutique rub her belly, and talking about our little miracle. And meanwhile, every time she smiled at me across the dinner table, all I saw was that flash drive of recordings sitting in my toolbox, waiting like a loaded gun. The baby was born on a muggy April morning at Baylor University Medical Center. Emily's parents were there, beaming like they'd just won the lottery. Her mother squeezed my hand and said, "Jason, you're going to be such a good father." I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. The nurse asked me if I wanted to sign the birth certificate. Emily's eyes darted to mine with a silent plea. I shook my head slowly. "Not yet. I want everything to be perfect first." She masked her panic with a smile, but I could see her knuckles go white around the blanket. 2 weeks later, the papers came in from the DNA lab. I hadn't even needed Emily's cooperation in the end. Mark's lawyer buddy walked me through how to request a postnatal test directly. The results were blunt, scientific, merciless. 0% probability of paternity. I read the words 3 times, then laid the paper flat on the table like a priest laying down scripture. My world tilted. Part of me wanted to vomit, part of me wanted to weep, but most of me just felt numb. This child, this tiny human with innocent eyes, wasn't mine, and yet Emily wanted me shackled to it forever. I filed for divorce the next morning. My attorney was a sharp-tongued woman named Rebecca from Plano who'd seen every trick in the book. When I handed her the flash drive and the DNA results, she raised an eyebrow and said, "Mr. Miller, your wife's about to have the worst day of her life in court." Her calm confidence steadied me. For the first time in months, I felt like I wasn't walking into battle alone. The courtroom smelled like wood polish and old paper, the kind of place where lives are dismantled in legal language. Emily came in wearing a pastel dress, her hair curled, a performance of innocence. Her parents flanked her, glaring at me like I was the villain. The man with the BMW was nowhere to be seen. Cowards rarely show up when the spotlight's bright. Her lawyer opened with honeyed words about a devoted mother and a confused husband. "Jason is abandoning his responsibilities," he said, trying to escape the sacred duty of fatherhood. I sat stone-faced, my hands folded, waiting. When it was Rebecca's turn, she stood like a lioness. "Your Honor," she said, sliding the DNA papers onto the bench, "my client is not the father, and we can prove that with science, not stories." The judge adjusted his glasses and read. Silence fell heavy. Emily squirmed, her face shifting through a dozen expressions: shock, rage, tears. "That test must be wrong," she blurted. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Mrs. Miller, the probability is 0. 0 doesn't lie." Rebecca wasn't finished. She pulled out the recorder transcripts, playing Emily's own voice. "Once he signs the early registration, we're set. He's on the hook." The words echoed off the paneled walls like a shotgun blast. Gasps rippled through the room. Emily's father sank back in his chair, his jaw tight, his face pale. Emily tried to cry her way out, claiming it was taken out of context, claiming I'd manipulated her, but the evidence was relentless. The judge, a stern man with gray hair slicked back, leaned forward. "Mrs. Miller, this court does not take kindly to fraud. Attempting to mislead this man into legal responsibility for a child that is not his is reprehensible." He signed the ruling right there. I bore no responsibility, financial or otherwise. My marriage was over, but my freedom was intact. When we walked out of the courthouse, Emily lunged at me in the hallway, mascara streaking. "You ruined me, Jason," she hissed. Rebecca stepped between us, holding her back. "No," she said coolly, "you ruined yourself." Emily's parents didn't meet my eyes as they guided her out, her sobs echoing down the corridor. I stood there in the fluorescent light, papers in my hand, feeling like I'd just survived a war. The gossip spread faster than prairie fire. At the diner, people whispered my name like I was a cautionary tale. At work, guys clapped me on the back and muttered, "Damn, Miller, you dodged a bullet." As some said Emily moved out of Dallas, that the BMW man ghosted her once the baby came. Others claimed she was living with her parents, the baby crying through the night. I didn't care. For the first time in months, I breathed without weight on my chest. But the story didn't end in that courtroom. It never does. It lingered in my bones, in every quiet moment. Betrayal is a scar that never really fades, even when the wound is closed. And though justice was served, the fire of it kept burning. When the gavel came down and the court dismissed me of any responsibility, I thought that was the end of it. Truth be told, I wanted to believe it was over, like I could just walk out of that courthouse, toss the DNA papers in a drawer, and go back to being some regular guy drinking cold beer on a Friday night at the bar with Mark. But betrayal doesn't clock out at 5. It lingers, dripping into every corner of your life until even silence feels loud. At first, I tried to live small. I went back to my job sites, kept my head down, ate breakfast at the diner, but the stairs followed me like shadows. Folks in Dallas talk, and in a city that big you'd think gossip would vanish into the traffic. It doesn't. My story turned into a kind of urban legend, the man whose wife tried to baby trap him with another man's kid. Guys at the job site swapped it like it was a Reddit thread, whispering, "You hear about Miller? His cheating wife almost got him for 18 years. And the waitress at the diner slid me extra bacon one morning and said, "Good for you, honey. You stood up for yourself." Emily, on the other hand, couldn't buy sympathy at a garage sale. Her boutique friends drifted off, the BMW ghosted her, and her own parents stopped showing up in public with her. I heard she moved back into her childhood room, the one with the yellow wallpaper and the squeaky ceiling fan, raising that baby with nothing but resentment in her voice. People said she tried to spin the story, claimed I'd abandoned her, but the receipts and recordings had already hit the grapevine. Truth spreads fast when it's juicy. For me, there was grief too. Don't mistake me, I wasn't mourning Emily. That woman was gone long before the courtroom stripped her mask away. No, I mourned the version of myself who believed in her. The husband who thought Friday night barbecue and a wedding photo on the fridge meant forever. That man died the moment I pressed play on that recording and heard her laugh about locking me in. What survived was colder, harder, and, for the first time, unafraid of peace. But America loves turning scars into spectacles, and mine became one. One night, scrolling through my phone, I found a Reddit thread in our relationships titled, "Wife tried to trap me with another man's baby. DNA test saved me." I swear, the post read almost word for word like my life. Strangers argued over it in the comments. Some called the wife pure evil. Others asked if maybe I'd neglected her emotionally. A few claimed the whole story sounded too wild to be real. I laughed for the first time in months. Imagine that, my misery packaged as late-night entertainment. That's when things turned sideways. Online conspiracies started cropping up, half serious, half joking. Some guy in Austin claimed there was a whole network of suburban wives pulling baby trap schemes, swapping lawyers' numbers like trading cards. A podcast out of Houston interviewed me anonymously, calling me Patient Zero of the baby trap conspiracy. They even gave me a fake name, John from Dallas, and asked me if I thought the government was in on it. I told them the only conspiracy I believed in was bad marriages and worse communication. Still, the episode went viral. Memes popped up of gavels striking like Thor's hammer, DNA tests glowing like superhero shields. My face, blurred, thank God, ended up in a TikTok montage with text across the screen. When she says the baby is yours, but you invest in receipts and science. It got ridiculous fast. A late-night comedian cracked a joke about me, saying, "If Maury Povich ever retires, Texas courts got this Miller guy ready to take his place." And my buddies at work played it on repeat until I had to throw a boot at them to shut it off. But I couldn't deny it, the story had legs. Through all the satire and internet circus, something unexpected happened. Peace slipped in through the cracks. I stopped flinching when my phone buzzed. I stopped checking receipts like they were treasure maps. I even started sleeping again. Emily tried reaching out once, a late-night text that said, "We need to talk, for closure." I didn't reply. Some doors aren't worth reopening, not even to slam them shut again. Instead, I bought myself a second-hand Ford F-150, took a weekend trip to Lake Texoma with Mark, and let the wind off the water remind me what freedom felt like. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't out for revenge. The courtroom had given me the only thing I wanted: truth, backed up by paper, ink, and DNA. Now when I tell the story, I don't spit fire. I tell it like a parable over beer, about how love without trust is just a lie waiting for paperwork, about how receipts matter more than promises, and how peace tastes better than revenge ever could. And if you're listening to me right now, wondering if this could ever happen to you, let me say it plain. Don't underestimate betrayal, and don't underestimate yourself either. The truth has a funny way of cutting through the noise, if you're willing to drag it into the light. In the end, this wasn't about a cheating wife. It wasn't about the courtroom or the gossip. It was about reality. And reality is this. Sometimes, the most American thing you can do isn't to fight, but to walk away with your dignity, your receipts, and your peace intact.